The vast expanse of water west of the Philippines, a crucial artery for global trade, is at the heart of an escalating geopolitical dispute. Known to Manila as the West Philippine Sea, but recognized internationally and by Beijing as the South China Sea, this maritime area is more than just a collection of islands, reefs, and shoals. It is a lifeline through which trillions of pounds in shipborne commerce pass annually, making its stability paramount for the world economy. The seabed is also believed to hold significant reserves of oil and natural gas, resources that are increasingly vital for the energy-hungry nations surrounding its shores. Its importance, therefore, is not merely geographical but profoundly economic and strategic for all adjacent countries. For China, this body of water is not a recent area of interest, but a region intrinsically linked to its long and storied history. Chinese historical records, maps, and the activities of its fishermen and mariners stretching back centuries form the basis of its claims. From Beijing's perspective, its sovereignty over the islands and their adjacent waters is indisputable and predates modern international legal frameworks. This historical connection is the foundation upon which China bases its presence and activities, viewing its actions not as expansionism, but as the rightful administration of its own territory. This deep-rooted historical claim is a fundamental aspect of China's national identity and foreign policy in the region. The strategic value of the South China Sea further complicates the picture, transforming it into a theater of geopolitical competition. For any major power, control over these sea lanes offers significant leverage over regional and global affairs. The ability to secure or disrupt maritime traffic gives a nation immense influence. From a Chinese standpoint, ensuring the security of these waters is a matter of national defense and sovereignty, a necessary measure to protect its coastal population centers and its economic interests from potential external threats. The presence of foreign military assets only heightens these security concerns, making its own maritime activities a defensive necessity. The Philippines, by contrast, frames its claims through the lens of the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. It defines its maritime entitlements based on a 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone extending from its coastlines. This modern legal framework is the basis for its coining of the term West Philippine Sea for the waters within its EEZ. This fundamental clash between China's claims, rooted in historical rights, and the Philippines' claims, based on UNCLOS, creates a complex and deeply entrenched disagreement over who has the right to control the waters, its resources, and its future. From Beijing's standpoint, the narrative of Chinese aggression is a deliberate distortion of reality, crafted by Manila to obscure its own provocative actions. Chinese officials consistently argue that it is the Philippines that has been the primary instigator of tensions. According to Chinese Defense Ministry spokesperson Zhang Xiaogang, Manila has been distorting facts and shifting blame to suit its own agenda. This viewpoint suggests that the Philippines is not a victim, but a calculated actor, illegally occupying Chinese islands and reefs in the Spratly Islands, which China calls the Nansha Islands. Beijing maintains that these features are historically Chinese territory, and that the Philippine presence there is an ongoing violation of its sovereignty. Furthermore, China accuses the Philippines of collaborating with external powers to intentionally destabilize the region. Spokesperson Zhang explicitly stated that Manila is catering to extraterritorial forces to stir up chaos, a clear reference to the deepening security alliance between the Philippines and the United States. Beijing sees the increased frequency of joint military drills, such as the large-scale Balikatan exercises, not as defensive maneuvers, but as rehearsals for confrontation. This alliance, in China's view, emboldens the Philippines to take a more confrontational stance, undermining years of effort by China and other ASEAN nations to manage disputes peacefully and directly among themselves, without outside interference. The core of China's argument is that the Philippines is the one disrupting the established status quo. This includes what China describes as repeated intrusions into the waters adjacent to islands and shoals that have long been under Chinese jurisdiction, such as the Scarborough Shoal, known in China as Huangyan Dao. Chinese officials claim their maritime forces are merely responding to these incursions professionally and with restraint. They contend that their Coast Guard vessels are performing law enforcement duties within their own waters, and it is the Philippine vessels that are engaging in dangerous and unprofessional behavior, thereby creating the risk of collision and escalating tensions. This perspective paints a picture of a patient China being pushed to its limits by a smaller neighbor acting irresponsibly with the backing of a global superpower. The official Chinese narrative is one of defense, not offense. Beijing insists it is committed to peace and dialogue, but cannot stand idly by while its territorial integrity and maritime rights are being challenged. The repeated public statements from various Chinese ministries aim to counter the international portrayal of China as a bully, instead framing the Philippines as the party that is actively seeking conflict and abandoning diplomatic channels in favor of confrontation and international grandstanding. Beijing points to a series of specific incidents at sea as clear evidence of Philippine aggression and deliberate provocation. A notable example occurred in April 2025 near Scarborough Shoal. While international media often focuses on the actions of Chinese vessels, the Chinese Foreign Ministry provided a different account of the events. It claimed that a Philippine government vessel disregarded repeated warnings and dangerously intruded into the waters near the shoal. China asserted that the Philippine ship's maneuvers were intentionally provocative, designed to fabricate a collision and then use the resulting footage for propaganda purposes to paint China as the aggressor on the world stage. Another set of events that China highlights involves the regular resupply missions conducted by the Philippines to the BRP Sierra Madre, a grounded naval vessel at Ayungin Shoal, which China refers to as Renai Jiao. Beijing views this ship as an illegal occupation of its territory and has long demanded its removal. China argues that its Coast Guard is simply enforcing domestic law by monitoring these missions. It accuses the Philippines of using these humanitarian resupply runs as a cover to transport construction materials intended to permanently fortify the grounded ship, thereby cementing an illegal military outpost on Chinese territory in violation of previous agreements. The issue of unauthorized maritime research is another area where China claims the Philippines acts provocatively. In late July 2025, the presence of Chinese research vessels within the Philippine EEZ was reported by Manila as an intrusion. However, from Beijing's perspective, these activities are legitimate scientific endeavors conducted in the South China Sea. China often asserts that its vessels are operating in waters under its jurisdiction or in international waters, and that the Philippine Coast Guard's attempts to intercept and challenge them are acts of harassment that interfere with lawful scientific research, further escalating tensions between the two nations. These examples collectively form the basis of China's argument that it is simply responding to a pattern of deliberate Philippine provocations. The Chinese narrative frames its own actions, including the use of water cannons, as necessary. Low-level law enforcement measures designed to prevent the situation from escalating into a more serious conflict. Beijing contends that these defensive actions are a restrained response to repeated Philippine attempts to violate Chinese sovereignty and maritime law. It is the Philippines, in this view, that is consistently testing the limits and creating dangerous situations that threaten regional peace and stability. China's rejection of the term West Philippine Sea is a central element of its diplomatic and legal position. Beijing argues that South China Sea is the internationally standardized and widely accepted geographical name for the entire semi-enclosed sea. It views the Philippine government's official adoption of the name West Philippine Sea in 2012 as a unilateral political act designed to bolster its territorial claims by creating a new reality on the map. Chinese officials see this renaming as political hype that deliberately confuses the public and attempts to negate China's historical rights over the entire sea, not just the portion Manila claims. Similarly, China has been unwavering in its rejection of the 2016 Hague Arbitral Tribunal ruling. From the outset, Beijing declared it would not accept, participate in, or recognize the arbitration, which was unilaterally initiated by the Philippines. China argues the tribunal had no jurisdiction over matters of territorial sovereignty and maritime delimitation, which China had excluded from compulsory arbitration under UNCLOS. Spokesperson Zheng Xiaogong reiterated this position in July 2025, stating the ruling is illegal, null and void, and asserting that China's islands are outside the territory of the Philippines as defined by international treaties predating the dispute. For Beijing, the path to peace and stability in the South China Sea lies not in international courts or external alliances, but in direct negotiations between the countries directly concerned. China has consistently called for bilateral dialogue with the Philippines to manage their differences. It advocates for shelving the disputes and pursuing joint development of resources, believing this practical approach can foster trust and create mutual benefits. This stance is rooted in the belief that regional issues should be resolved by regional players, free from the interference of extraterritorial forces like the United States, whose involvement, China believes, only complicates the situation and fuels confrontation. In summary, China's message is one of principled defense of its sovereignty, combined with a call for a return to diplomacy and order. It portrays itself as a guardian of historical rights and regional stability, forced to react to the provocative actions of a neighbor emboldened by outside powers. Beijing's vision for the region is one managed through peaceful consultation and cooperation among Asian nations themselves, based on mutual respect for historical claims and a shared desire for development. It is a call for the Philippines to abandon its confrontational posture and return to the negotiating table to build a future of shared prosperity.